Okay, so we understood about few of the properties of SAP HANA database. Also, we got introduced to the HANA development. Also shared that in the sapeducation.blogspot.com. I've already shared that first assignment link. And in this, like, we are going to discuss about more in detail about the HANA Studio. So first and foremost is like we can access this HANA database through the HANA Studio or the Eclipse as well. So this we have this as like we have HANA Studio. In the HANA Studio, we'll have all these options. When we get this overview screen, in the overview screen, we'll have all these options here. Here we have the HANA modeler perspective that we have done, and we have created a schema, and we created a table in it, and the table we created it using a flat file. Automatically all the fields names and the properties are replicated automatically. So here we have this server has to be given this instance ID, host name, instance ID, and all these things should be given. And once they are all given, we can access that. So this is one way of creating the database table using using our SQL code. So we can write an SQL code and we can go ahead and declare that. And then what we have is we can also go ahead and do the same thing with the automatic process when we have the flat file. So in this, what we are doing is we are just creating a table. We are creating a table, and also we are also adding the data into it. So we are adding the data to it using the same code. So here we will go ahead and create a table similar to this what we have in the example, and we will go ahead and do that. So once we complete that, we can access this data that we have created in the schema based tables into the views. So this attribute views, analytical views, calculation views, procedures just accesses the data from the schema based tables. So this cannot be built on the database tables. The database tables cannot be accessed from the attribute views, calculation views, and analyticals. So what are these views and what is the significance of these views is what we need to understand in particular. So here we basically are finding a table from which we can access the data into the information views. So view at this point of time, we all know the views, right? So whenever we created any kind of a view, we used it to access the data from database tables. Same thing happens here also, but the only difference is that this information views, attribute views, analytical views, calculation views access the data from the schema based tables. That's the main difference here, fundamental difference. Once we have this table name, we can find a particular table in which we already have the data, and we can select that and we can access the data from the views. This is what we have to do. So now if we have to create that if we'd like to create a table using the SQL code, we can do that. So let's create a HANA schema based database table using SQL commands. Let's do that now. Okay, so let us go ahead and create a schema based table with schema based table. Let's create a schema based table with SQL code. Let's write an SQL code here. So for this, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and write a simple SQL. So here we'll go ahead and create a simple SQL table. So we will create a table using SQL code. That's what I mean. So we'll open the open SQL console. So I'm creating at the schema level. So you can create this at the schema level, or you can also write it at the catalog level. Catalog level also we can right click and create a schema. Okay, open SQL, and we can write the table here. We write the logic for creating a table. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So here we can decide at the beginning itself, we can decide whether we want to create a column based table or row based table. So I'll go for create column table, create column table. And since we are giving at the schema level, we can directly write the table name. But just in case, like since we already, so we can write it like this. This is Aditya dot, that's a schema name, as says say employee data. So here we need to give the field names. So field names we need to give it in the what do you call in some double inverted quotes. In normal ABAP, and double inverted quotes actually creates a comment, but here we need to give the double inverted quotes. And in this we'll give the field name. I'll go for empno, and just like we give type, we don't have to give the type here. Nvarchar is the property, and I'm giving the length as something like some 5. This is the first field. This happens to be the first field, and then we can go ahead with the next one. Comma empno nvarchar, or you can go for varchar only, because in employee number, if you think that there will be no numbers, you can go for varchar. Varchar is also an acceptable data type. Fine. And at the last, you can just actually get department also. I'll go for department, DEPT, varchar again, length is something like 3. That's it, and semicolon. Now this is what we'll be doing for creation of a table. So this is a columnar table, and this is a schema name. Whatever is the schema name that we have here on the left side in which we are creating it, that schema name needs to be given. But since we are writing the SQL code at the schema level, even if you skip this schema name, it still works. But if you are doing it at the catalog level, we must give the schema name, otherwise it throws an error. So we'll just execute it. So instead of see employee number and employee name, both the lines I had same employee number only. So now it's created successfully. It is created, the table is created successfully, but there is no data in it. So let's refresh this schema name, and then we can go ahead and check this table here below this tables. In the tables now you can see 2 tables. One is the one which we have used, which we have created by automatically by replication. Another is the one which we have created now. Right click on this. Open data preview, and no, not this. This is the table, and if you see open data preview, it will be a blank because we have not yet entered any data in this, so it will be blank. Okay, so this is the code that we have used in the SQL, which actually enabled us to create the table. So going forward, we can create few more tables, and not just that, we can also create the data in the table using this SQL command system. We can write the SQL command and we can create the data in it. Fine. Okay, now we'll go back. See, basically SAP HANA was introduced as a sidecar method. SAP HANA was introduced as a sidecar method here. here we have this HANA database. HANA database was first introduced for a side-by-side scenario in which we just had HANA database introduced for a different HANA studio. But in this case, we had something called the HANA NetWeaver, and we had the Service Pack 05. So HANA database Service Pack 05, HANA database Service Pack 06 are very important, guys. Like, please remember that we have major things are two different HANA database versions are there. HANA 1.0, HANA 2.0. HANA, if they are mentioning it as just HANA database, it's 1.0. For HANA 2.0, they will mention it as HANA 2.0 database. And HANA 2.0 comes after all these service packs. So SPS stands for service pack. Okay. So in service pack 05, we had NetWeaver integration. Service pack 06, we had the NetWeaver integration, and they have optimized the entire ABAP on HANA to work on the HANA database itself. That's very important that we have to remember. Okay. So we have this development guidelines here. These are the various development guidelines. So what are these all about? We'll come back to the screen again because we need to understand each one of them definitely, and then we can understand. So we have common changes to SAP tables when SAP HANA is the primary database. So if the HANA database is the primary database, then there will be slight changes for the database tables. So basically, whenever we have this, if the database is primarily HANA database, then we will have in the technical settings, we can see that the database specific properties will be given, wherein you will be given an option of either making a table column based, row based, or undefined. So this options will be there. And then in the change display table category, in the extras change display table category, we'll have SAP HANA database. So it will be by default tick mark will be there, and you cannot, you should not remove that because that's something which is a main database storage. And then we have, when we go to this non-unique index, we have for selected database systems, we can click on database systems, and we can get this database. So we can get the indexes. Secondary indexes can be created. So for text indexes, we can create secondary indexes. Indexes are basically to navigate to the data. So indexes can be maintained. And what's in from the ABAP programming perspective, we can accelerate, extend, innovate. Okay, we can accelerate, extend, and innovate. So accelerate in the sense like you can do background, reduce the runtime for background jobs. In fact, like all the background jobs which used to run hours and days together can be just completed in few seconds right now. And extend, like you can have huge number of people working from various different platforms, front end, and from there we can do it. Then we have the innovate, new processes and applications. So all the programs are basically run in the database tab rather than the application tab. So here we have the HANA Views, and HANA Views which we are talking about are the views that we will be creating now. Views, in the views we have basically the attribute views and calendar. So here we have this HANA Views and stored procedures. From there we can access the data here. So HANA Views, stored procedures. So HANA Views we can extend it. We can see it in the external views here. And stored procedures we can see it from database procedure proxy. Now this was the old one after the Service Pack 02, but Service Pack 05, more than Service Pack 05, we have HANA Views, stored procedures, CDS views, and ABAP managed database procedures. So these are the various things that we have from the HANA latest Service Pack 05. After Service Pack 05, they created the CDS views. So we can build CDS views and access the data from HANA Views. Just like we are accessing the data from database tables into the CDS views, we are accessing the HANA Views data into the CDS views. So the CDS views are capable of accessing the data from HANA Views as well as database tables. And stored procedures are something from where we can access the data into AMDPs, the ABAP managed database procedures, right? So we discussed, right? We'll come back to this AMDPs later again. So the CDS views also. So CDS views we have done it to access the data from database tables, and we have created AMDPs. AMDPs are always planned to access the data from the HANA database only, majorly, primarily. So we have AMDPs and we have this transparent optimizations, database oriented programming model, and we have this. So core to data capabilities of ABAP 7.4. So performance wise, in the HANA we'll have huge rise in the performance, transparent optimizations, advanced SQL in ABAP, and HANA native features. So these are all the options that we have in the HANA database. So we'll analyze the settings in the ABAP dictionary. You can just normally log in into the ABAP dictionary and check the properties of this database tables, whatever we discussed. We can just have a view. We can just view it and then we can discuss. So uh, the other day we were discussing about the ABAP development tools. So ABAP development tools are basically to integrate ABAP platform with the HANA database. So everything that unites ABAP with HANA database are ADT, ABAP development tools. So ABAP development tools comes into picture from where we can access the data into various systems. So we have SAP GUI. So these are the fast, like shortcuts we have. Okay, so which of the following database HANA based scenarios involve ABAP applications? Data marts based on SAP HANA, ABAP with HANA as a primary database, native SAP HANA applications, or SAP HANA as a business accelerator. The answers are applications are ABAP with SAP HANA as a primary database and SAP HANA as a business accelerator. In both the cases, we actually integrate this SAP HANA and ABAP applications. So on HANA, tables are stored in row store by default. Okay, so in SAP HANA, what is the default storage method? Is it row based or column based? Yes, you are right. It's column based. Okay, so row based is wrong. So we have everything will be stored in column based. By default, it will be column based. And even now, even before when we created the table, we created a column based. Column based is default. And then which of the following entries are required when creating a system in the SAP HANA Studio? So we have host name is required, instance name is number is required, and these are all the things that we require. So we have host name, instance number, username, and logon language. These are all important to access the server from the HANA Studio. So catalog node. What are the things that we see under the catalog node? Under the catalog node, we didn't see the package at all. Package comes in the content node down below. We have not yet explored that. And then we have the schema. Schema will be a part of the catalog. And table is also a part of catalog. And calculation view is not a part of catalog. It is a part of the content. So what are the right answers? We have schema and tables, B and C. Okay. Next step. It is not possible to create secondary indexes on SAP HANA. Is it true or false? Yes, it's false. Okay, it's false. Now here we have this: which of the following new repository objects belong to the so-called top-down approach, code to data services? So, and like basically we have external views, we have CDS views, we have database procedures, proxies, and AMDP procedures. So which one is right? So CDS views and AMDP procedures. These two actually go and connect to the database, right? So external views and database procedures proxies are no more in use. CDS views and AMDPs are the thing that will go and hit the database. So taking ABAP to SAP HANA, if we are taking the ABAP to SAP HANA, we have SAP HANA as a secondary database, code checks to prepare a ABAP code for SAP HANA, and tools to analyze the potential performance issues, guided performance analysis, and SQL performance rules for SAP HANA. This is what we are going to discuss in the next session, like after the break. So we will go ahead and discuss about these things now. We have something called database independent code to data, and SAP HANA specific code to data. and consuming the HANA objects. So when we are saying consuming the HANA objects, this is where the database tables which we have created, schema based tables that we have created will be in use. Okay, when we do that, we'll explore that. So in this, we can see that we have inserted the data. Insert into this is the schema name in double inverted quotes. Dot emp data. It's a table values and give a space here and 101. And we need to align this data with the field names. Whatever field names that we have here, we need to align the data with that. So for example, we have EMPNO, EMPNA department, three fields. So we need to align our data in that way. 101 Ali SAP, 102 Lee SAP. So this is what we have. This 101 goes into the employee number, Ali goes into the employee name, and SAP goes into the department. This is what we have. Done. So I'll go ahead with open data preview. And here we'll have this 3 records. Already we uploaded 100 RAM SAP. Now we uploaded 101, 102, and this data is going into the database table directly. So in this way, we can update the data into any particular database table using SQL code. So we have created the table using SQL code, and we also updated the data using the SQL code. This was the code that we have used for creating the SQL based table. And so once we create the database table, it doesn't matter how you create it, it will be the same once it gets created. Whether it might be the table or the data, it will be the same. Okay, so from here we'll continue in the next session.